Here we are for another round of the 70s versus the 90s, and it's a sequel of a round as I put Jeannot Szwarc's Jaws 2 up against Steven Spielberg's The Lost World. And, this one was another fun one, because like both of these sequels are entertaining. They get the job done. But, first off, Jaws 2. Like, how in the hell do you make a sequel to a perfect movie? I mean, and also they killed the fucking shark at the end, so I would say they wrapped it the fuck up. So what do? Oh, well, there are other sharks in the sea. Another one comes along, similar killing machine, it's got a taste for destruction and shit. Honestly, I think that this shark in Jaws 2 like destroys more property than it does like people. The motherfucking thing takes down a helicopter and shit, and they do a lot of wild shit in this one, but for the most part, it's kind of boring and it's kind of bullshit. Roy Scheider returns, and a lot of the background players, like Murray Hamilton returns as the mayor, and of course Lorraine Gary comes back as the wife of Chief Brody, and the kids are older and shit. Most of the townspeople are there. It's a full continuation. We're in Amity Island still, and shit seems to be flourishing. They got the guy that played Stefano from Days of Our Lives builds a Holiday in there, and then that he's flourishing and shit. So they don't want anything to fuck up their perfect little world of recreation and resorts and shit. But then when Brody gets to say, fuck, I've seen these roads before, so he's he gonna try to stay on top of it. He doesn't want to make the same mistakes that they made the first go round. But also, Quint died at the end of Jaws, so you don't get that kind of badass character. And also, the Hooper's on some fucking institute fucking out in Antarctica. He ain't showing up. So basically, Brody's got to be all three of those guys while still just, and also just being Brody, And so, but, Roy Scheider, and you can tell he's kind of bored with the material, but, he kind of does his own thing. He kind of plays it to the hilt a little bit. You kind of can see a man kind of having PTSD from the fucking shark, But honestly, this is shit that they don't, in my opinion, dive in enough. They touch on it briefly. They focus more on these fucking kids out there sailing and shit than they do anything else, and then the shark just, comes up. There are some sequences like the water skiing one where they fucking scar the shark with the fire and all that shit, and then it becomes even more sinister now that the shark is Scarface and shit, and they try to adhere to the formula that Steven Spielberg laid down by not showing the shark too much, although one shot that they seem to favor is, kind of attach the camera on top of the shark's head, like a thin perspective, I guess you could fucking say. But all in all, like, because the director Jeannot Szwarc, mostly kind of a TV hack director, and but this seems like a film that was mostly directed by the second unit, because when it's the actual actors, it's very basic, kind of quirky, made for TV movie type shit, just with a few more explosions and a little bit more shark action, and even the way they kill the shark is kind of fucking corny. He bites a fucking electrical line and then just fucking doesn't even really explode, just fucking catches on fire and fries out and shit. And, so all in all, like, it doesn't, for being an unnecessary sequel, it doesn't do much to further anything other than, try to make people think, maybe sharks are, vengeful creatures and shit. They don't give a fuck, like the lady told him in the fucking movie. But then they also made 2 more of these fucking sequels. So, that any way to cash in on a fucking masterpiece, but then we move forward to The Lost World, talk about how the hell do you make a sequel to a perfect movie? Well, maybe Spielberg has the formula, because he also did that with his prequel, Temple of Doom. It would take something that was so great as Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then bam, just do something extraordinary like Temple of Doom, that's fun. And it does the same thing with The Lost World. He comes back just to have fun. Jeff Goldblum returns. We get to see Richard Attenborough in a brief scene, and but we also get Julianne Moore, who's a fucking badass in this, and Vince Vaughn's in this shit, and all the real shining star though has got to be Pete Postlethwaite is the Great White Hunter guy that they get, because I mean you fucking have a whole sequence where you're hunting dinosaurs. These motherfuckers are out there just on a fucking dinosaur safari. You know, this shit is nuts. Because that's the thing. If you're gonna do a sequel, you need to one up what the fuck you just did. Don't just, don't just stick to the fucking formula. Go big or go home. And that's what Spielberg does with this one. He fucking just gives you, they take what worked in the first one and give you more of that. You know, they want T-Rex in the middle, you get two of them. They take 2.5 counting the fucking kid, because that mid say, it tops, it damn near tops every fucking thing that you saw in Jurassic Park, because even the fucking scene in the tall grass with the raptors, all the raptor shit is fucking great. Then you get newer dinosaurs, little fucking little things that fucking just like to nibble on motherfuckers and shit, and the same kind of shit you get to see assholes like Peter Stormare plays the biggest asshole in this movie. He gets chomped on by those motherfuckers and shit. Everybody kind of gets what they deserve. The dipshit engine guy ends up getting eaten by the T-Rex and shit, because these motherfuckers want to try to bring the animals to like fucking San Diego and shit. And of course that goes awry. They get the T-Rex there and that motherfucker runs amok. And that shit's pretty. There's some funny sequences there. A lot of movie jabs that Spielberg makes in that shit. So all around just a fun movie, and might even be better than the first one. And that right there is what makes a great sequel. So that's why clearly this is going to the Lost World. So like the 90s have been fucking crushing it. As we see, the 90s were a lot better at making like popcorn adventure flicks, and sequels too. They were no slouch when it came to sequels either, because usually in the 70s, they would make sequel. They even made a sequel to The French Connection. We need none of this shit. It's fucking lame. When you've already got a movie that's so perfect and wraps it up and puts a devastating spin on shit, you don't need a fucking sequel. And even Jaws, you really did not need a sequel, let alone 3. So I mean, now, mind you, Michael Crichton wrote 2 books, Jurassic Park and the Lost World. He didn't go further than that, but the movies did. And, in my opinion, they should have stopped at 3. It would have been a great trilogy, but, money, whatever the fuck. But you can't, like, honestly, the series peaked with the Lost World. I mean, there's shit in Jurassic Park 3 that is pretty good, but, like, fucking Jeff Goldblum shit is great, just the humor in it, the camaraderie, the fucking dinosaur action, and of course, like I said, Pete Postlethwaite, that motherfucker is a badass. So, yeah, I got to go to the 90s on this one. So for anybody keeping score, that's 16-15. 70s are only up by 1. I feel like the 90s are about to tie it up, and we'll see who the fuck breaks that tie. But right now, 70s are still ahead by 1, but the 90s are catching up, because, once you get through the masterpieces of the 70s, there's a lot more bullshit than motherfuckers want to like admit, but then again, so such as the 90s, so that's why this shit is starting to get exciting, because like, who fucking knows? But something as simple as that, plus Spielberg, man, that motherfucker knows how to make fun, like popcorn entertainment. Some of his serious movies are good, but nobody really like remembers him for his serious shit. They remember him for shit like Jurassic Park and Jaws. And, they offered Spielberg Jaws too, but, he knew that he made the definitive Jaws movie, and of course, like, being the Lost World, having being the sequel to Jurassic Park, who better to do it than Spielberg? And you can tell he's clearly having just as much fun on this one as he was on the first one and shit. And, and of course, it's always a fucking joy to see Goldblum just do his fucking thing. So, 90s win this round. They've been fucking smoking them. They got one more to go before they can tie it up. 16-15. And the next big main event is 3 Days of the Condor versus Spy Game. So that one should be interesting. Real wild card there. Don't have a dog in any of that fight. Really getting to the point where it's, not a dog in any fight other than like, either I'm gaslighting myself or, I was right all along type shit. And it's going to go up and down, may even test my sanity and shit. But also, if I've said anything wrong or something you don't agree with, feel free to mention it in the comments, or any suggestions, or, maybe something, whatever the fuck, it's what this whole thing is for, public forum type shit. I'm just one man with an opinion looking to discuss some shit. If anything, I'm just writing out the rough draft of my doctoral thesis, and maybe I'll submit it to some film douchebags. I don't know. But all I know is 16-15, 70 still up by 1. I'm super fucking excited. How about you?